I think to introduce C-Vap, I have to go back a few years and introduce food service, much as we know it today. Let's go back to World War II. World War II sent 20 million American men into uniform, 10 million of them overseas. 10 million of them were overseas at one time. Well, we had a Lend-Lease program to build equipment for the Russians. We also now had 20 million men in service, and we needed to build rifles, ammunition, tanks, jeeps, 6x6 trucks. We had to manufacture the munitions, the logistics, the means to get that equipment to the battleground and get 10 million soldiers and sailors and Marines to the battleground. had to make ships. We had ships that were being sunk by submarines, and we started manufacturing ships, cargo ships, to move people and to move material and to move food and supplies to our troops overseas. We were losing 2 ships a day by submarine, had to replace them with 2 ships a day. Our mothers and wives and girlfriends took off their dresses, put on slacks, went to those war plants, got jobs, and took our jobs, took the man's jobs to get that, to win the war. We won the war by 1945, and 20 million men started coming back home. Approximately 20 million wives, mothers, girlfriends found out that they didn't mind working, that these slacks were kind of nice, and the job was kind of nice. And independence that started tens of years ago, and the women's suffrage thing was being furthered with this independence. They had picked up the soldering iron, the hammer, the tools, whatever it was, and they built the munitions that caused us to win the war. No question about it. About 1952, Eisenhower said, we've got to improve the highways across this country. So Eisenhower introduced the concept of the Interstate Authority. That was passed, I believe, in 1953. In terms of, his Eisenhower's concept was it was going to help us move tanks and military. That was not acceptable to the civilian. But however, that was transformed into a civilian program to build the highways that the American citizen needed. So now we were building highways that would allow us, perhaps on an overnight drive, to drive to Florida for a vacation. We had the 2 people being employed, men come back, some of them took some of those jobs, some of them didn't, but the fact was that we were getting 2 wage earners in those households, paying for the house, paying for the clothes, paying for the kids, paying for the cars, paying for 2 cars, and paying for those vacations to Florida. Now we had many wives, mothers, girlfriends that were not cooking supper for the men as they came home at night, but they were working out and they were picking up supper on the way home for the men at night. Food service, outside food service. Along came a couple of men named Ray Kroc and Colonel Sanders to solve part of that problem for them. All a cultural and a social shift, all in the direction of women's suffrage, all in the direction of what men wanted for their wives also, and what they wanted for themselves, to play golf, to go to Florida, to eat out. And that's the thing that began to happen. Ray Kroc, the colonel, started his thing in '55. By '65, he had, in the United States, 3,000 outlets. Ray Kroc, they each had $2 billion businesses, $2 billion businesses. And those were the dominant ones. And because of their success, we had some upstarts to spring up, Wendy's, Burger King, Burger Queen, and all the names that we drive past today, all competing with each other to be sure with the technology that existed 100 years ago with home cooking equipment. That's what my mother's kitchen was in the restaurant. She had 3 big home ovens. And there was not any commercial equipment at the time. So the commercial equipment manufacturers sprung up to satisfy that need. And I guess we were one of those. We were not one of the first, certainly, to be sure, but we were in Louisville, Kentucky, where it just happened to be the home or the near home of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Colonel Sanders had the collision, the experience with Colonel Sanders. We are innovators. We like to do things, we like to sell things. So we became one of those. We became one of the improvers. By the 1980 time frame, the Burger Kings, the Burger Queens, the McDonald's, the Wendy's, KFC store had drive-in windows. Now the housewives the housewives now could stop by a drive-in window without getting out of their car, going home and pick up dinner to take home. That is, at least some of them could. Some of the drive-in windows would ask you, they took your order, would ask you to go out in the parking lot and park, and they'd prepare your meal and bring it out to you. Unacceptable from a competitive standpoint. That's when I began to make the recognition that we had grown out of, food service had grown out of its hot food holding technology, or never had anything to begin with. Mother prepared the meal, and she had us at the table when the meal was prepared. She never tried to hold foods hot. Didn't want to, didn't care to, didn't even think about it. Now, in order to deliver those foods out the drive-in window immediately, foods had to be held hot at a just cooked quality, and nobody knew how to do it. The Colonel first used what was referred to at the time as a proofing cabinet to raise doughs. There was indeed the matter of raising doughs in the bakeries, to raise the donuts, to raise the cakes, to raise the breads, to raise whatever. And so he asked George Baggett to put bigger heaters in the proofing cabinet and to hold the fried chicken. And it would do a pretty good job. It would hold chicken for probably an hour or hour and a half. It at least did a better job on fried chicken than anything else did on hamburgers or anything else. And as a matter of fact, many of us prefer a fried chicken that may be day-old chicken. So it wasn't too difficult to hold fried chicken, but everything else was tough to impossible. That proofing cabinet, as I encountered this industry and started talking about holding cabinets to our customers to whom we had sold pressure fryers, they were, even at that time, were referring to the holding cabinet as their proofer, that George Baggett had changed the heaters in for the Colonel. So it was at that time that I began to realize that no one had ever attempted to hold foods for an extended period at a just cooked condition. And I had had the experience at General Electric Company as a research engineer of developing washing systems and doing a washing fundamentals, doing a study on how to wash clothes. And I had learned that there was a science in everything that we did. And if we knew what that science was, we could put ourselves perhaps just a little bit ahead, perhaps much further ahead than our competitor who did not know that science. So I undertook to understand what it took to hold foods hot and moist for an extended period. And that is what produced the C-Vap brand of products.